Well, Israel has always claimed to be the best at everything, but what we see last night is that they needed 4 other nations to help them block Iran, and Iran was actually toying with them. That is exactly what Iran was doing. It was playing with them, and it can be read clearly when Iran said that it conducted the particular offensive on the strength of Article 51 of the UN Charter pertaining to legitimate defense. And this defense was against the Zionist regime's aggression on their diplomatic premises in Damascus, which killed 16 personnel, including high-ranking Iranian officials. But Iran further then said that the matter can be deemed concluded. However, it also stated that should the Israeli regime make another mistake, Iran's response would be more severe. So if you look at it in contrast to the 1.5 billion that the IOF spent last night on air defense, the total cost of the Iranian missiles and the drones was just $35 million. In other words, the cost to Iran was just 2.6% of the cost to the Zionist entity. And in just a few hours, over 67% of the IOF's monthly military budget vanished. So what is the context? The context is that Israel bombed the Iranian embassy in Syria, and Iran waited for a condemnation from the United Nations Security Council, but France, the UK, and the US prevented such a condemnation. And this was arrogance. It was a violation of international law. These states have made it abundantly clear that they have no respect for international law. But if you look at Iran's behavior as a state, there is a precedent for Iran not wanting to escalate. In 1998, in September, when there was escalating tensions in Afghanistan and the Taliban seized Mazar-e-Sharif and then attacked the Iranian consulate, which also led to a tragic loss for Iranian diplomats, Iran sought a diplomatic exit to avoid a war. At the center of this turmoil was Sweden, because at that time Sweden had the presidency of the UN Security Council, and it was entrusted with the task of trying to bring about a resolution and de-escalating. So what Sweden did was it ensured a forceful condemnation by the United Nations Security Council, and this led, of course, to a situation of de-escalation, sparing the region from plunging into a full-scale conflict. Sweden ensured a robust condemnation of the assault, and it chose to uphold international law. It provided Iran with a face-saving opportunity to avert military reprisals against the Taliban. So if you look at the two cases, despite the parallel circumstances of Iranian consulates being targeted and officials losing their lives, the response from the international community, particularly Western states, has diverged significantly from 1998 to 2024. The United States, the United Kingdom, and France, driven by their allegiance to Israel, obstructed efforts to condemn the attack against Israel through the Security Council. And this obstructionism has not only undermined the principles of justice and accountability, but it also paved the way for this escalation of tensions. But again, Iran has always been cautious and has done everything possible to avoid escalation. It reportedly said through Oman that the scope of its attacks would be collaborated to avoid escalation into an all-out regional context. And we get the same kind of a feeling that has been coming out from Washington. Washington did not expect the retaliatory attack to be large enough to draw the US into a war. So it's recognizing that there isn't a desire to fuel a regional war. And both Washington and Tehran appear to be saying the same thing about what's coming. So what we understand is that the US saw through this, and it told Iran that as soon as you give Israel a correction that's proportional to the Damascus strike, you're good to go, because we are led to believe that the US was not aware of Israel's strike on the embassy in Damascus. It was also reported that Biden told Netanyahu that the US will oppose any Israeli counterattack against Iran. So again, another indication of de-escalation. Now, what we see in terms of the Western Empire managers and the propaganda, specifically the Zionist propaganda machine, is that they have been framing the Iranian retaliation in exactly the same way as they framed the October 7th attack, to suggest that Iran is attacking Israel out of the blue, and it is completely unprovoked, and again that Israel is the victim, as though bombing an embassy would not be considered an extreme act of war by any nation anywhere on the earth. Or likewise, imprisoning 2.1 million people in a concentration camp for over 17 years and laying siege to them is not sufficient reason for a retaliation. What do we know about Iran's retaliation? Well, it didn't target civilian centers, it only targeted military bases, and it will be remembered in history books for years to come, because Iran successfully secured and protected all Iranian embassies. It not only secured the embassies, but it broke through the psyche that you cannot attack Israel per se, the same way as Hamas has broken through that psyche and that fear that you cannot break through the barriers and attack Israel. And also it is now known that without the support of the strongest military and most evil nation at the moment, political nation, or shall I say political establishment in the world, not the people itself, the US, the Israeli military would have failed to defend close to 20 to 30% of their targets, of the targets that were fired at. So Iran finally got over the taboo of attacking Israel, and this will make it an easier decision from now on. So Israel is now on the back foot and will have to be on defensive position for a long time coming. It will also have to think carefully about what it does in future going forward. And Hezbollah has refrained, which we see from their refraining, to show that the historical event is Iranian. It also wants to avoid escalating the battle into Lebanon. What the defense looked like yesterday, you saw it, and people say, but Israel can easily do it. Israel can do it, but it isn't sustainable, and Israel is basically going broke. So the events of September 1998 serve as a stark reminder of the pivotal role played by diplomatic resolve in averting catastrophic conflict and upholding the principles of justice on the global stage. And that has been severely lacking with regards to the genocide in Gaza and what Israel has been doing. It is almost as if all of these nations, these Western nations, have just completely lost their moral compass and their understanding of international law and the principles of it.